This is something really rather special. It's a brand new Road Ti from US company Blackheart Bikes. And I saw them in Sea Otter back in April when they launched the bike, and it's a bike I've been keen to ride ever since. And here it is. And in the video, we'll go through the details and what makes it so special, go for a spin to see how it performs and handles, and also as a bonus, talk to the founder of the company to find out what makes them tick. So let's dive in. So the company founded with an all-road Ti, a wide tire versatile bike a few years ago, and then at Sea Otter back in April this year they launched this, their new Road Ti, and designed to be a very racy, sporty, fast bike, but still using titanium as a frame material. And it is a really smart, clean looking bike with some real standout details. Now, titanium is a material I personally have a soft spot for. I know lots of you do too. It's durable, timeless, fantastic ride quality. But what we have here is a bike that blends those attributes with all the modern details we come to expect on carbon race bikes like a tarmac and so on. And when I first saw the bike at Sea Otter back in April, it really grabbed my attention, which is impressive given how many nice bikes were on display at that show. And the reason it grabbed my attention is because they combine the timeless appearance of titanium, a really nice looking frame, pared back graphics, with the modern detail of a fully integrated front end, which we normally see on carbon aero race bikes. And there aren't currently many titanium bike companies offering full integration like we have here. Titanium has always been a fairly expensive frame material, although prices have come down in the last decade or so. And here, Blackheart is aiming to be accessible, or as accessible as possible. And frame prices start at a fairly reasonable $3,000. And yes, that's a lot of money, but it does compare well with other titanium bikes. And complete builds start from just under $6,000 and go up to almost $12,000. And the company offers a range of builds. You can choose different wheels, tires, and other parts as well. And the prices do compare well with a carbon rival. So take a bike like this with SRAM Force, for example, and a set of Hunt wheels, and it's about $1,000 cheaper than a similarly equipped Tarmac SL8. So undercutting a very popular carbon aero race bike. The bike I've got here is a fairly top end kind of flagship example, and the weight of this bike, which is roughly a 56 centimeter with no pedals, but with bottle cages fitted, is 7.8 kilograms, which I think is pretty good for a metal bike, albeit one with a high end build. And that does compare well with other kind of carbon bikes in this sort of price range. Nice bike, right? Before we go for a ride and hear from the founder of the company, I need to tell you about today's sponsor, Squarespace. Squarespace is the all-in-one platform that makes it really easy to produce a professional looking website. And honestly guys, it really couldn't be any easier and simpler than this. And there are tons of templates to get started with, and everything can be customized to your heart's desire with a nice drag and drop interface. And you can build a website for anything. An online store if you have a bike shop, a cool bike brand, online classes, a photo gallery, or start blogging. There are tools for literally everything. So if you run any kind of business, then Squarespace is the place to be. And you find it for yourself with a free trial using the link down below in the description. And if you enjoy it, well, you get 10% off your first purchase using my special code on the screen right now. Finally, a dry bit of weather, being really wet and thundery recently. So let's see what the bike is all about. And the most immediate impression is how it feels like a rocket ship. The really punchy, engaging bike to ride, and loads of speed. Plenty of stiffness on the frame. It's not flexing or twisting underneath me, even though I'm a lightweight rider with measly power output. It's a bike that still feels really sharp and laser focused. And once you're rolling, you get into a nice and natural flow. It's devouring my local country lanes, carving the bends smoothly and punching up the climbs, and definitely punching well above its weight. And while you might not choose titanium for racing, because you might want to go carbon for the weight and aero benefits, I can certainly see a bike being raced. I don't think it would hold you back at all. It's not really that heavy, and it's definitely not slow. But if you're like me, and you still like riding a race bike for the excitement they give you when you're riding your bicycle, but you want a bit more comfort and you want that timeless look of titanium, then this is a really appealing option. I've ridden a few Ti race bikes over the years, but mostly Ti is reserved for kind of full season, all-dax, touring, bikes with wide tyres and mudguards and dynamo mounts, because that's where the material is really popular, especially with the more elderly viewers watching the video. But this is a reminder that titanium can still be used for a bike that delivers all the speed and sensations you want, and typically reserved of a carbon aero race bike. Anyway, that's enough waffling from me. The other day I had a chat with Zach, the founder, so let's join that conversation now.
The kind of priorities with Blackheart are beauty and function. I don't think that you want to compromise either, but when we talk about beauty, it's always something that is going to look good if you were to find it in a book that was looking at, architecture from the 1950s or car design from the 1950s. And then in 2050 or 2060, we want the bike to have that same kind of timeless feel. What we started with the All Road Ti was something that echoed classic road design and had a few modern touches to kind of bring it into the 21st century. With the Road Ti, instead of just doing an iteration of the all road and kind of echoing that same design, the idea was really to bring modern bike design into the titanium world. And there's a few bike companies that are doing it right now. There are a few companies that are doing fully integrated bikes, electronic only, but most of those still have that kind of classic shape. And then among the companies that are doing a modern titanium road bike design, a lot of them are that like $5,000-$6,000 or equivalent to your local currency, kind of very expensive frame set. And so, although the Blackhearts may not be cheap for some people, within the category they represent a really good value, and that's really what we're going for, is to make that modern, beautiful, timeless road titanium bike a little more accessible to folks.
And was titanium always an obvious choice if you kind of strive for that beauty in a bike?
I think that all materials can be beautiful. Titanium for me was just a personal desire back in the 2017 timeframe when I started looking or designing the All Road Ti. I was personally looking for that bike. And I couldn't find a bike that had the capability, aesthetic, brand, price point, all of those things coming together in one package, which is why the All Road Titanium started. I also really enjoy the durability of it. I love metal. I like tactile things. I like things that are handmade, and all titanium bikes are hand welded. So starting with the Road Ti, that was an obvious choice for what I think was missing from a bike perspective that was in the market. And then I think over time we'll look to introduce this bike in other materials.
Okay, so you're not tied to material, are you? You're open to other materials if they fit.
Yeah, and I've always said I think you can make a really great bike out of any material, and I think you can make a really bad bike out of any material. It comes down to who's making it, what the process is, but then also what's the purpose of the bike. So if you're trying to make the lightest carbon gravel bike in the world, there's going to be a trade-off when it comes to durability. And just like if you were to make a titanium road bike, there's going to be trade-off from weight. Someone who's racing the Tour de France and cares about shaving 8 seconds off a climb, they're going to want the lightest, most aerodynamic carbon fiber bike on the planet. But for me, I don't race. I have different priorities, and those priorities more lie in the emotional benefit of a bike, the beauty of it, the ride feel, and the timelessness, something that I could have for years and still appreciate, and it doesn't get as beat up or potentially chip or crack like some other materials can.
It's a bike shaped by your own riding and the riding you do and the roads where you live in California.
Yes, yeah. I mean the All Road Ti for sure was born out of the Santa Monica Mountains, where it's lots of beautiful climbs, beautiful descents. So that was actually kind of like design preference number one was descending, turn off your brain, very intuitive, feels like an extension of your body. And then the gravel riding in Southern California is lots of fire roads, kind of smoother dirt. Now the Road Ti is pure performance, and it basically, take everything that is great about the all road from a road perspective, turn it up to 11, and bring in all those modern elements. Now you're talking about something that really can, you can. Someone could, I couldn't. Someone could take that bike and go win a road race, no problem, right? So I wouldn't say that bike's going to hold you back at all, unless you're at that very pinnacle point of the spear from a performance standpoint.
Okay. One of the key features is the cable routing. You've got a one-piece carbon handlebar stem, and the cables are inside. How much of a challenge was that in terms of designing and packaging it all to make it look as nice as it does look?
Um, I mean, from my perspective, it was pretty easy. I just told them what I told them, meaning my factory and the engineers and the welders, what I wanted. I think where what really sets the Blackheart apart is the details, and this is the same with the all road as it is the road. When I look at bikes, I get very OCD, and I very quickly start to see different sizes of tube shapes and overall aesthetic and balance, and proportions. And so when you look at the Road Ti, there's a reason why we use a 31.6 seat post. And people will kind of get all up in arms and say, oh, 27.2, it's more flexible and more comfortable. And it's like, okay, well, you can use a shim if you really want to. But if you use a 27.2 seat post, it makes the seat tubes smaller, which means then proportionally you have a smaller top tube, which then looks weird with a big head tube, which is required for modern routing, and then throws off the down tube. And so by having the larger seat tube, you can then have the top tube the same diameter. The top tube actually on the Road Ti is 34.9 in round diameter at the seat tube junction, and it keeps that height all the way across to the head tube. But if you're looking down from the top, it actually flares out wide to be as wide as the down tube. So all of these things kind of come in to create a really great balance aesthetically. And I think that's what most people get. When people look at a Blackheart, they'll say like, oh my God, that's a beautiful bike. And maybe you can't really understand why it's beautiful. Same way as I would look at a painting and maybe I wouldn't know how to do it or why it's beautiful or be able to tell you the history of art behind it. I can just look at it and say that's beautiful. And I think that's where Blackhearts kind of blend. It's that undefinable beauty where all the details come together.
Now, attention to detail like that usually means a high price tag or the extra work you clearly put into it and the to and fro the factory. But you're trying to be competitive with the price. Can you talk more about the price point of it compared to other rivals in Thai space and also carbon?
Yeah, so like typically you have two levels of pricing with titanium frames. You have a price that's based on having the frames welded in a factory in Taiwan or in China, and then you have a price based on having the frames welded domestically, either in the US or in the UK or
Okay.
name your local country. All titanium typically comes from either Russia or from China, the actual ore. That's where it's typically located. There really aren't any titanium ore reserves in the US. So a bike that is quote unquote made in the US, it's titanium that's mined in Russia or China. It's refined there. It's turned into tubes. It's turned into parts, and then typically shipped on shore to the US, and then those frames are welded here. For Blackheart, the titanium is more mined in China, refined, and it's actually welded in the same factories that are suppliers for a lot of the quote unquote top tier titanium frames out of the US. So it really just comes down to where the frame's welded. Once the frames arrive here, we design, warehouse, and build everything in Truckee, California, which is by Lake Tahoe. We also are part owners in a bike shop in LA called Luft Los Angeles. So that we kind of have those two homes. And to your original question, our frame set $3,000 for whether it's the all road tie or the road tie. That's based on just having the frames welded in China, and then typically like a domestically welded frame set would be about double. And
Wow, okay.
that was one of the reasons why I started Blackheart. Like I couldn't afford a five or $6,000 frame set, but I could afford a 3,000. And so that's how I started thinking about, well, if I would love something that is aesthetically beautiful, has this function, is a brand that I can relate to, and a price point I can afford, there's got to be someone else who is like me.
And did you feel the frames in that sort of lower price bracket weren't offering the attention to detail that you clearly sought after, so you had to make your own?
Yeah, I could find everything, but not together. I could find a frame I thought was beautiful, but I couldn't afford. I could find a
Okay.
frame I could afford, but I didn't relate to the brand. I could find a frame that had the geometry and function that I desired, but not the aesthetic. And I think that's what sets us apart is being able to connect all of those things and bring it in one package.
One of the interesting details on the frame is the SRAM UDH dropout compatibility. Is that something you see being a bigger feature on road bikes? So SRAM haven't announced any details what that might be, so you're just kind of covering yourself in case that is announced in the future.
It's multi-purpose. So at a basic level, you can get one of those derailleur hangers at pretty much any bike shop in the world now.
Okay.
And derailleur hanger is the weakest link of the bike. So especially on a gravel bike, if you break one, you're in trouble. So for one, the primary reason is just so that it's a lot more convenient for customers.
Okay.
Secondary reason is, so I don't know what SRAM is planning on doing, but I know that they've introduced their direct mount mountain bike derailleurs. So if it's kind of future proofing, and that's an overall kind of feature for Blackheart bikes is every time we do a new production run, it's trying to make things a little more easy for the customer, a little more future proofed. And a little less of, oh, you need this proprietary, whatever part just to be able to use your bike. I don't want someone in 5 years to say like, oh, like my bike's useless because I can't get a derailleur hanger for it anymore.
And the frames are very pared back when it comes to graphics. That's clearly deliberate. What's the reasoning behind that? And do you offer different colors, different options on graphics, or is it just one option? That's it.
Yeah, it's funny. So it started because when I got the first samples, I think 2018 or so, they had no branding on them. And so my fiance Chris and I, we'd ride around LA testing them out, and every time we'd stop somewhere, people would be kind of like looking closely at them to try. They're like, "What is that?" Like, I don't. So because there is that interest, that's kind of where we decided, hey, let's just do like a really beautiful small logo on the top tube. We'll do a simple heart on the head tube, and that's kind of where it's born from. As I launched the brand, I also had this feeling of I don't love having a huge brand logo all over my things. I like things that are more subtle and classy. I also don't like if I go and buy something to then see someone else with that same thing. It's kind of a bummer. So we introduced, originally it was just a custom fork paint program. And now we've partnered with Cerakote. So Cerakote is a really thin ceramic coating that's also very durable. So for the all road, we offer custom Cerakote on the fork. It's super reasonable. It's $100 to do a single color on a fork. And then for the aluminum bikes, we do full custom. So pick a frame color, pick a logo color, pick a fork color, and it's $300 for frame paint, $100 for the fork paint, and that's all rooted in, bikes are a tool, but they quickly become a representation of you, an extension of you. And, you know, I, I, I know there are people out there who've had a bike stolen and it feels like, you know, your heart is broken in half because you immediately think back of all the adventures that you've been on or the stories that you've had with your bike. Um, and I prefer looking at a bike and seeing a scratch or seeing wear, and it reminds you of that story that is your life with your bike. And I think the more that we can allow people to customize their bike and make an extension of them personally and emotionally, the better. And that we actually just launched the Cerakote program last week. So super excited about that. I don't do custom paint on the Ti bikes, on the Ti frame, because I think the Ti is just so beautiful and it kind of shines for itself, and then have a nice accent on the fork. But, you know, if someone wants to paint their frame, that's awesome.
We should talk about the name as well. It's a cool name. What's the story behind the name? Is there something in there?
Yeah, so Blackheart was actually my fiance's idea, or it came from her. So
Okay.
she would always say like, "Oh, I've got a black heart," and like, you know, it's kind of a joke because she's the opposite. She's a bleeding heart, and she's so thoughtful and so caring. When I started Blackheart, part of the reason why I wanted to start it was not only because I couldn't find the bike that I wanted, but I wasn't relating to a lot of the marketing that was coming from the big brands, which was, oh, it's, you know, 5% more aerodynamic and 10 grams lighter, and it's that you can too messaging. If you buy this bike, you can also ride just like a professional. And so the kind of original ethos of the company was, I didn't relate to that. I wanted something that that more and kind of wrapped up how I felt about bikes and how I think that people should just be able to kind of ride how they want without any sort of judgment around it. And so not having a love for that kind of mainstream marketing messaging was where that kind of name Blackheart kind of got attached to the company. And now I think it's kind of evolved where people have really related to that kind of ride how you want to ride. Don't feel like you don't have the right sock height or the cool glasses on. It doesn't matter. And we see that a lot in the LA riding community of, you know, people showing up for gravel rides in a torn t-shirt or a flannel shirt or like jorts with, you know, whatever. That's very celebrated in our community versus I think the typical experience of cyclists is you have to like really conform and fit in.
So that has been our first ride at the brand new Blackheart Bikes Road Ti. And if you want to find out more about the bike, I'll put a link to their website down below in the description. And if you want to see some other titanium bikes I reviewed over the last few years, then do watch this video up here. And of course, don't forget to subscribe for more content like this on a regular basis by hitting the button just here. But that is all for today. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you again very soon.